Miami's Cuban population typically supports the GOP, but that could change in 2020. NBC News correspondent Ellison Barber spoke to 3 Cuban Americans about why they're considering going blue in November.
Central threat posed by climate change.
Do you think the 3 of you are anomalies, or could Cuban Americans like you make a difference in a battleground state like Florida?
At least with my generation, I don't believe that we're anomalies. I think that the younger Cuban generation is definitely, I do think that there's a generational shift. You know, Trump doesn't represent the Republican Party that many of our parents and grandparents grew up with.
I don't vote based on party lines. You know, I vote for whoever is the most qualified.
Are you worried that some of the Democratic policies could turn off older generation Cuban Americans?
I do think that the word progressive and a lot of the progressive ideals might scare Cuban Americans. However, I don't think that that will be a problem with Biden.
He's got a history of being a moderate and a centrist. From time to time on certain issues, he's a little left of center. And from time to time, he's right of center, which is why some of the far left members of the Democrat Party rejected Biden. And luckily they lost, and Biden won.
How are you feeling about this Democratic presidential ticket?
Well, I think it's an interesting ticket. You've got a mix of old and new, so that's always great to see. But it felt like he was relying a little bit more on emotion than this is what I, quote unquote, plan to do.
Biden probably wasn't my first pick. I feel like I'm a little bit more progressive, also being on the younger side. But I do feel like Biden and Harris are the people I'm going to vote for.
Listen, he's not a guy that gets me all pumped up and excited. You know, Biden, him and Trump are in their 70s. I wish we had younger candidates, but we got what we got. And between Biden and Trump, for me, it's not a difficult decision.
Ellison Barber joins us live now from Little Havana in Miami as part of our County to County series, where we follow key voting blocks leading up to the election. Ellison, tell us more about what you're hearing from Cuban Americans in Miami. Anything surprising about why these voters might go for Biden and Harris?
Hey, Allison. Yeah, so we put together that little group to have sort of our own mini watch party in the very weird times that we are in now. It was at a private venue. Everyone was spaced out, socially distant. The 3 of those voters, they had never met each other until last night. All 3 of them live in Miami-Dade County. All of them have Cuban heritage. Janet, the woman you heard from there, she just graduated high school. She actually starts her first year at Harvard just next week. She identifies as a Democrat. She says she is progressive. You heard her say there she wished that maybe the Democrats had put up a bit more of a progressive candidate. But the other 2, Peter and Ismael, they have voted Republican for the majority of their lives. Peter considers himself a Republican. He'd never voted a Democrat until 2016. I mean, the thing that kind of united the 3 of them in terms of why they are giving Biden and Harris a look, particularly as it related to Peter and Ismael, is their frustrations and their disdain, really, for President Trump. One thing that stood out to me in our conversation yesterday after Biden's speech, Ismael talked about how one thing that stood out to him during Biden's speech was when Biden talked about America being a place of possibilities. And he said, you know, I am here. Everyone on this panel is here because at some point a member of our family decided where they were from, where they lived, was no longer a place of possibilities. But he said in order to have possibilities, you have to have a leader that has substance, not just show. He felt like Donald Trump is just show and performance, but he was not entirely committed and in on Biden. He said time will tell whether or not he is that substance. But, you know, kind of what we saw in that group where there was sort of varying shades of blue, if you will, right now. I mean, this is a voting bloc, Cuban Americans that typically vote Republican. And there is still strong Republican support and strong support for President Trump among that community. In 2016, 54% of Cubans living in Florida voted for President Donald Trump. That's 2 times higher when you compare it to non-Cuban Latinos. Only about 24% of them voted for President Trump. Allison?
Ellison, Peter, who you spoke with there, was saying that Biden isn't a guy who gets him pumped up and excited. What do Biden and Harris need to do to excite the Cuban-American community more ahead of November?
If I could answer that with any sense of authority, I would go gamble right now because I am smarter and better at predicting things than I ever anticipated, but I'm not, so I won't. I will tell you kind of one of the things that I heard from the 3 voters that we were talking to yesterday was that they did feel like they wanted to hear a little bit more detail from Biden, but you know, that's honestly something that we hear a lot of times. Politicians are politicians, you know, so that was sort of a key thing for them. They'd like to hear more, but in terms of excitement level with Peter and Ismael, they're kind of begrudgingly voting for a Democrat because they really don't like President Trump. So I don't know how much excitement we could get out of those 2.
All right, I hate to flip it. I won't ask you for a prediction, but the Republican National Convention does start Monday. Are there certain things the GOP can do, certain things they can address to try to hang on to this group of voters?
Well, yeah, you know, in terms of the 3 voters that we were talking to, for them, they said President Trump, no, there's nothing that he could say next week at the convention that could bring them onto his side to where they would cast their vote for Trump-Pence come November. But they said there are things that the Republican Party could do to bring them back. They don't feel like they've completely left that party or left leaning right in the case of Ismael. But they said for them, they need somebody else at the head of the Republican Party other than President Trump in order to go back to them. In terms of what they are open to hearing next week, I asked them, you know, is there anything Biden and Harris could say that would make you not support them? All 3 of them said they really couldn't see anything right now. They said, of course, there's always a possibility, but no, not right now. And I said, is there anything Trump and Pence could do to convince you to maybe give them a second look? They were all pretty absolute on saying no. They feel like they have seen President Trump enough years that they just don't really feel like there are really any surprises left to move the needle for them one way or the other.
Ellison Barber in Miami, thank you so much for helping us to better understand how voters there are thinking. And our special coverage of the Republican National Convention starts Monday night at 8 p.m. Eastern with Chuck Todd, followed by a network primetime special at 10 p.m. Eastern. You can watch it all right here on NBC News Now.
Hey, NBC News viewers, thanks for checking out our YouTube channel. Subscribe by clicking on that button down here and click on any of the videos over here to watch the latest interviews, show highlights, and digital exclusives. Thanks for watching.